In 1781, in or near the village of Coosaw, a village that was situated just 3 miles below the confluence of the Coosa and Tallapoosa rivers, William Weatherford was born. He was the son of a Scotch trader and a Creek mother, specifically Sahoy, of the Wynn clan of Creeks. His father, Charles Weatherford, went to live amongst the Creeks, along with Samuel Mims, to escape the ravages of the Revolutionary War in 1780. William had little to no schooling, and there is no evidence that he could even read or write. Most of his boyhood education came from his mother's matrilineage, observing and participating in ceremonies and councils at the village of Coosaw. As adulthood came, he indulged his time into playing stickball, hunting deer and bear, and training horses for his father. In 1801, William married his first wife, Polly Moniac. They soon developed their own plantation some 54 miles down the river from Coosaw. Although William was not originally from the Tensas region, he spent a lot of time in the area visiting the plantations belonging to his brothers David Tate and John Weatherford. William did not become a Tensas resident until after the Creek War was over. When his wife Polly died in 1804, he then turned his attention to the Creek political affairs. Unlike his brothers, William chose the violent route in the heat of the Creek War. On August 24th, Red Stick forces assembled at Flat Creek, finalizing the plans for the attack on the Tensas settlement. Here, William accompanied the larger force of Creek warriors, weighing in at 750 men strong. Because he knew the Tensas region so well, he became a key leader amongst a large body of warriors. The evening before the attack on Fort Mims, William addressed the warriors to spare the women and children. "We came here to fight the men, not the squaws." This upset the other warriors so much that they accused him of having a white heart. By hearing this first-hand account, we can assume that he was in fact caught between the two sides of the conflict, which in this case was war on his own people. At dusk on the 29th of August, William and another one of his trusted warriors crept up to the fort walls to see what they were up against. When he peered through the flimsy pickets, all he could see were a few glimmering lights, and he could hear talk on common topics of life coming from the inhabitants of the fort. This is when he knew that the people on the inside of the palisade was not expecting an attack. At dawn on the 30th of August, leaders like Paddy Walsh, Josiah Francis, Highhead Jim, and William Weatherford finalized their plans as their fellow warriors stripped down to their loincloths and painted themselves red and black. The Red Sticks' revenge that they so eagerly wanted from the surprise attack on them at Burnt Corn Creek just a month ago was to be served at noon. William crouched in a ravine 400 yards east of Fort Mims, awaiting the sound that alerted the fort for their midday meal. At the sound of the drum beat, the warriors charged silently across the fields to the fort. As the onslaught took place, William begged his warriors to stop fighting. He knew that the fort was to be lost. The killing of women and children was not needed. Once again, the warriors under his leadership threatened his life, causing William to find his steed and depart from the massacre. When he left, he rode hard northeast towards the plantation belonging to his brother David Tate. Upon his arrival, he frantically told his brother that his heart could not bear witness to the havoc that was to follow the fall of Fort Mims. At the time of the attack on Fort Mims, William was somewhat in his prime. At 32 years of age, standing at a height of 6 foot 2 inches, William had fair-complected skin, light brown hair, and mild black eyes. Charles Weatherford, the grandson of William, later wrote a letter to Halbert and Ball stating that he had an aunt inside the fort walls at the time of the attack. She claimed to have seen William come through the gates in full stride and leap a pile of wood that was almost as tall as his head. She heard him yell to Dixon Bailey, "Today, one or both of us must die." His dress at the time of the attack, although not documented, was probably not his Sunday's best. But with his place of leadership, I doubt he was stripped and painted like the other warriors. I suspect him to have had a pair of pucker-toe moccasins with a pair of leggings, accompanied by a loincloth, a light calico hunting shirt, which was a popular pattern in the early 19th century. He could have had his shot pouch and powder horn, which served his musket or rifle. A turban or wrap could have been on his head, partnered with a plume or feather of some sort. After the horrible Creek War of 1813-1814 had concluded, William surrendered to Andrew Jackson at Fort Jackson, which was stationed just a short distance from where William was born and raised in the village of Coosaw. Rumor has it that William marched into Jackson's marquee unannounced and gave this elaborate speech on being done with the war. The rumor goes on to say that Jackson was so compelled by his bravery that he let him go on in peace. But today, we see by evidence that all that merely was a rumor. Days before he went to Fort Jackson, William sent a letter to Andrew Jackson letting him know of his upcoming surrender. Jackson did in fact let him go in peace, but had him take command of the friendly Creek force that was tasked to round up the runaway Red Sticks who were left after the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. Interviews in the mid to late 19th century tell of William's fearlessness, fine horsemanship, and love for hunting. Years after the war, William was asked why he chose to fight with the Red Sticks and not his white counterparts. He simply answered by saying, "They were my people. I was raised with them, and I was prepared to share their fate." William later returned to the Tensas region, where he lived the remainder of his life until his death in 1824. His name, of all things, remains a controversial topic in today's historic world. The term Red Eagle wasn't given to him until 1855, nearly 3 decades after his death. His actual names were simply Billy, or Yellow Billy Weatherford, possibly for his fair-complected skin. Today we think about how conflicted he must have felt during that difficult time of the Creek War. Being born in between the two races, with both white and Creek blood in his veins, we can only assume that the difficulties were tough to bear. How a man that led warriors into battle on the Tensas inhabitants could come back and live in the Tensas region, amongst those same people that he sought war upon. It is a crazy thing to think about, but honestly, we are so lucky to have this history, because the events that took place right here where I stand today, where William Weatherford once stood himself, altered the course of American history. Thank y'all so much for watching this week's episode Along the Wolf Trail. Next week will be the final part in the series covering my absolute favorite person in story, Zachariah McGirth. See y'all next week.